Alrighty, we'll be covering part 2 of getting a new tenant ASAP, how to turn a property as fast as possible, how do you get a tenant in there as quick as you can. Check out the first part, I'll probably link it up here if I remember, and we'll go into the second part here. Oh yeah, remember to give us a comment here if we missed anything or if you want anything else discussed. Like here and subscribe here. Alright, here we go. In part 1, we discussed what you do with your current tenant, what you do with property features and cleaning and repair. We'll discuss what you do with a new property in this video, how you pre-advertise whether it's a new property or if you have a tenant in there already, and going over the school systems and what you want to do there. All right, into the slides. So if it's a new property, you want to make sure that it has everything that we usually recommend. This isn't financial advice. Don't do anything I say. I'm a YouTuber, not your realtor, not your financial advisor, and certainly not your mortgage broker. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is make sure there's a bathtub so their little ducklings can get in it and take a bath if you have a family that wants to be in there. This gives you the largest pool of renters as we discussed in part 1. I only do 3-bed, 2-bath or more, usually, unless there's a really good deal on a 3-bed, 1-bath like I had on one of the last properties I purchased. It was about $40,000 under market value, so I went ahead and picked it up, even though it only had 1 bathroom. It did have a bathtub, and I was able to rent it out within 4 days of taking possession of the property after closing. That's what you can do if you follow these little things we do here. And like I said again, don't do anything I say. Don't follow what I say. It's not going to work out for you. I'm just a YouTuber. Okay, so with your new property, we discussed in a previous video as well, if you pre-advertise the property prior to taking possession, you can get leads lined up for tenants to come through and show after the closing. You can probably make it happen the same day you close on the house. I usually do the day after, so I have a chance to look through it or have my realtor look through it and clean anything up that needs to be cleaned up before a tenant actually takes a look at it there. But anyway, when you pre-advertise a house, you need to contact the seller and say, hey, this deal is set to close in a week or 2 weeks or whatever. Is it okay if I use some of your photos or some of my own that I took or my realtor took to advertise the property? If they say okay, you go ahead and do that. You put it up. You tell people what you want to rent it for. You explain the property. You put the features and details up there, and people start calling you. Your phone's going to ring off the hook. So the other thing that happens if you're picking up a new property, you're going to have inspections, repairs, and then turning it over to the new tenant. So when you get your inspection back, you should have a couple weeks before closing, at least when you get your inspection back. Have your contractor scheduled the day after your inspection, walk through the property, and go ahead and estimate repairs on anything on that the inspection report. So once you know that, you can schedule your contractor for the day after closing to begin repairing the property if it's going to be any time at all for him or her to repair it. So if it's 2 weeks, like we mentioned before, your contractor says, hey, it's going to be 2 weeks, it's going to be 3 weeks. You go ahead and add 2 weeks to that because it's going to take them forever to do it and they're not going to show up on time. If you have a contractor that shows up on time and finishes multiple jobs and jobs that take more than a week on time, link them in the comments below. I will switch to them immediately. For schools, when purchasing this property, you should have ensured the school system was excellent. As long as the school system is excellent, you will have the largest tenant pool if you have these other things here. You'll have families, you'll have people from all over the state trying to get in touch with you to rent this home. You'll have people from out of state. You'll have people from across the country saying, hey, I'm moving to, I don't know, we looked at Augusta, Georgia before. I'm moving to Augusta, Georgia. I need to get a house in this school system. I see you have it available, blah, 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 blah. Then you go into it and boom, they show up and they rent the property right away because they know that they have to have it. They have to have a lease or residency in the school district in order to enroll their children. That is what schools do for you, and that's why you make sure you have good school systems with your rentals. There's other things to be said about rentals that are B or C properties. Yeah, you get them a lot cheaper. Yeah, you can charge for rent and get a lot better return. But then you're dealing with evictions, you're dealing with late rent, you're dealing with everything landlords don't want to deal with. Me personally, I do good school systems, so I get good people in there, good families in there that pay their rent on the time. They don't want to be evicted. If they do, their children have to leave the school. Okay, I'm tired of this slide as usual, so next slide. So for the schools, you want to make sure it's a desirable school system that gives you the family that will live there. So here's the deal. All right, this slide is specifically for schools, even though I talked about it on the last slide that was related to purchasing the new property. You want to highlight the school system that your property is in. This will get the attention of families, especially if you're on the edge of a district. When you're like looking online as a tenant, look at it from their perspective, okay? They can't tell where the school district lines are. So you make it very clear in your ad that this is great schools. It's whatever school system, rated 10th in the state or 6th in the state or whatever. Just make sure you point out that it's a good school system. That way they see it is, I don't know, we talk about Augusta. It's Augusta County Schools and it's a good school system and they just want to live there. So they know then that your house is in the school system. So they pay more attention to it. If you do that, they're not even looking at the other houses that don't list that they're in the school system. They can't tell. There's no way for them to tell without doing the extra work of actually like going to the school system website, looking at their address registry, all this stuff to verify the schools in their school district that they want. So make sure you list the school district if it's a good one and if you want your tenants to move in ASAP. This also gets you long-term tenants. We discussed in a previous video, if you have a family move in, let's say 3 kids, one's a toddler, one's 5 years old, one's 10-year-old. So all 3 of these kids are going to go through this school system. If that family just wants to rent in that school system, they will literally be there the entire time their children are in the school system, which if it's a toddler is going to be 12 years from now. That toddler is going to go to preschool in a school system and 12 years, 13 years later, graduate from the high school. That's when your tenant might move out or just want to buy the house from you. So that's why you go with the good school system. You not only get a bigger pool of tenants, you get long-term tenants. So you don't have to flip and turn the property and do all this crazy stuff that we talked about in part 1. Okay, next slide. So our last slide in this 2-part presentation is pre-advertising. Got a little out of order here, but that's okay. We don't care about that as long as we get our home rented. Okay, so pre-advertising, you're going to do this whether it's a new property or if there's a tenant in it already. You should have confirmed with your tenant or with the seller if you're buying a new property that you can pre-advertise the home. If it's a current tenant, it should be written into your lease. So the lease should say, hey, I can advertise this house 60 days before vacancy. You need to notify me 60 days before you move out. I'm going to go ahead and do that. So you confirm that with your tenant, talked about it in part 1, and you get the pictures up online. You get them out there. You get your description up. You get everything going. So when you do that, you get people calling you right away. You get a line of people ready to move into the house or who are interested in the house. If you can do this 60 days out, you're almost guaranteed to have a tenant ready to move in the day the home is available. They'll be clamoring at the door trying to get the keys so they can move in. They'll be throwing checks at you, money orders, whatever, so that they can get their deposit, first month's rent, all that stuff into you, so that they can get into the property. If you wait till a week before, well, you know what? You might get a tenant right away if it's a super desirable area, but then you may not. You may be waiting 20 or 30 days for a tenant to be ready to move in. Now, if you're purchasing the home, you don't really have the option 60 days before because usually your closing period is 30 days, right? So you're going to confirm with the seller maybe a week or 2 weeks before closing, hey, can I go ahead and advertise this house as for sale as we close on it? I want to have it rented out within 3 to 5 days of the closing. As long as they agree, you go ahead and post all this stuff too. You contact your realtor or whoever's going to be showing the house, your property manager. Maybe it's you showing the house. I don't know, and I don't care. It's not my house. It's your house. Not financial advice. I don't advise buying houses or anything. I'm just a YouTuber. Anyway, you're going to get a hold of your realtor or whoever's showing the house and let them know, hey, we're going to be showing the house. Are you available on blah, whatever date after closing? I'm going to go ahead and line up people to walk through it. And your realtor is going to say yes or no. Property manager is going to say yes or no or whatever. Schedule somebody to be there to show tenants through the day after, as long as it's clean and doesn't need a ton of repairs. So for tenants, they're going to be clamoring if you have this advertised soon enough to move in, if it's in a desirable area. So you have to get a list. You have to schedule them. Schedule them for your realtor. Or maybe you have somebody that's going to do this for you, whatever. Have them schedule these tenants for the day after or whenever it's going to be available to look at, and let them know when it will be available to move in. It can be a range, right? So you don't know if you have 2 weeks worth of work, it's actually going to take your contractor 4 weeks because they're super slow and don't show up and go out drinking the night before and all this other stuff. You know, maybe they go to bowling or, you know, whatever on Friday night so they can't work Saturday morning. I don't know. So anyway, it's going to take your contractor a couple weeks longer. So tell your tenants, hey, you know, we're taking possession on the 1st. This house will be available between the 15th and the 31st or 30th or whatever. Give them a 2-week window and confirm with them, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, would that work for you? And they'll either say yes or no. If they say no, then guess what? They don't need to be scheduled to walk through your house. The other thing you're going to do, when you schedule tenants to walk through, go to pre-approved renter or Avail or Zillow or whatever you're using for a software to manage your payments and manage your application process. Have them fill out a pre-application. I say pre-approved renter because that's the one I personally use. It's a free pre-application. The tenant can fill everything out and send it to you, so you know if they're going to fit into the property or not, and if they're going to pass a credit check, as long as they were truthful on their application. So anyway, the tenants are going to line up to do this, and you're going to get pre-approved tenants. You're going to get tenants that will work for the property. They meet the credit score guidelines you have. They meet the income, whatever guidelines you have, whatever requirements. They're going to put that in their pre-application. You can filter out the tenants then. So maybe 6 people call you, only 3 do that before that you can show the house. So you go ahead and schedule those 3 to go through, and if these other 3 ever come around and actually fill the stuff out and send it to you, then you can schedule them. But at that point, you have 3 qualified tenants that will be walking through the house the day after you close. A little, it's up to you if you do this or not. It is a little trick. You can actually schedule them so they somewhat overlap on their visits, so they will actually compete with each other over the house. I don't personally do that. I've just heard stories where an owner will schedule a tenant to show up 5 minutes before the other one's supposed to leave. And unfortunately, I think that person had stopped doing that because 2 of these tenants got in a fight, not a physical fight, but a verbal argument in front of the house in the yard over who gets the house. So needless to say, that house was rented that first day that owner took possession. It worked out really well for them. Okay, and that'll do it for getting a tenant ASAP. We're going to go ahead and go back to our first slide. You can subscribe here. You can link comments or, not link, but write them down here if you want anything else covered. Like the video right about here. There's a little thumb and a little video to watch right here. All right, well, hey, y'all have a good day out there. Hope you get your tenants in there right away, and let us know if we can do anything else.